He only wanted a quiet cup of coffee, until a little boy looked at him with tearful eyes and whispered, "Please don't leave my mom." In that moment, Marcus realized, some lives cross our path because fate refuses to let us walk away. The rain hadn't stopped all morning. It slid down the coffee shop windows like tears, making the view of a quiet street in downtown Seattle blurry. Inside, the smell of coffee mixed with the soft sound of a slow piano song, wrapping the place in a sad calmness. Marcus Anderson stood by the entrance, his hand still resting on the glass door, frozen mid-step. He had come here to forget, to find a few moments of peace before going back to his empty apartment. But the moment his eyes fell on the woman sitting in the corner booth, staring down at a half-empty cup and trying to hide the storm behind her eyes, something inside him stopped. And then there was the boy, maybe 6 or 7, sitting across from her, his tiny hands wrapped around a warm cup of hot chocolate, watching his mother with a sadness far too heavy for someone his age. Marcus didn't plan to get involved. He had enough of his own heartbreak to carry. His ex-wife's betrayal had left him with scars he didn't dare reopen. But when the little boy suddenly looked up, their eyes met, wide, innocent, and silently begging. For a second, Marcus forgot to breathe. He almost walked away. Almost. Until the child whispered, his voice shaking but clear, "Please don't leave my mom. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, in moments when a simple choice can change an entire life, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading stories that remind the world what compassion looks like." Marcus froze. The boy's words echoed in his chest like a prayer from the universe itself. He looked at the woman again. Her name, he would later learn, was Sarah Williams. Her face was pale, her eyes tired, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of her cup. She looked like someone who had been fighting a battle she was meant to lose, yet refused to give up. The boy, her son Jacob, kept glancing toward the door, as if afraid Marcus really might leave. Against his better judgment, Marcus walked over. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know why he was there. But the sight of the small coffee cup in front of Sarah, untouched and cold, the way her shoulders shook when she breathed out, pulled him in like gravity. He quietly sat down across from them, not asking for permission, just offering his presence. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Only the faint sound of cups and soft coffee shop chatter filled the silence. Then Sarah looked up, startled, her eyes red but strong. Marcus noticed she tried to smile. One of those smiles people give when they're too broken to mean it. He saw something familiar in her, the same loneliness he'd been living with for years, the same pain of holding yourself together when everything's falling apart. It was a look you didn't forget once you'd worn it yourself. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't push. He just sat there, and somehow that was enough. As the minutes passed, Sarah finally began to talk, her voice barely above a whisper. She told him she had moved to the city 6 months ago after her husband left without a word. He'd promised to return but never did. The house they shared was sold, the savings gone, and she was left to raise Jacob alone. She'd been trying to find work, but between rent, food, and daycare she was sinking fast. That morning she'd come to the coffee shop for a job interview, only to be told she wasn't experienced enough. When Marcus found them, she wasn't just tired, she was defeated. Marcus listened in silence. Her story shouldn't have surprised him. Life was full of cruel endings. But something about the way she spoke, the strength behind her tiredness, woke something deep inside him. He remembered his own lowest point, the night his wife had left and taken everything but his guilt with her. He had walked into a similar coffee shop back then, ready to disappear into the background forever. A stranger had spoken to him that night. A simple, "You're not alone," that kept him from breaking. And now looking at Sarah and Jacob, he realized this was his moment to return that gift. He looked at Jacob, who was tracing little circles on the table with his finger. The boy looked up and asked quietly, "Are you going to help my mom?" It wasn't a question. It was faith. Pure, innocent faith that somehow someone would care enough to stay. Marcus nodded before he even thought about it. The next few weeks unfolded like a fragile sunrise. Marcus started stopping by the coffee shop every morning. Sometimes he brought breakfast for Sarah and Jacob. Sometimes he just brought company. He helped Sarah fix her resume, taught her how to apply for jobs online, and found small ways to make her life easier, fixing her car, dropping Jacob at school when she had interviews, and even helping her study for a bookkeeping test. He never overstepped. He simply filled in the spaces where life had left cracks. But in helping them, Marcus found himself healing too. The laughter of a little boy became the sound that replaced silence in his apartment. Sarah's smile, slow to return but real when it came, began to melt the walls around his heart. And for the first time in years, Marcus started to feel something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. Still, not everyone believed in second chances. When Sarah finally landed a job at a local accounting office, her new boss, a bitter man with no patience for single mothers, began making her life difficult. Late hours, unfair criticism, and the unspoken threat of losing everything again haunted her. She tried to hide it, but Marcus could see the weight growing heavier each day. One evening he found her sitting outside the coffee shop again, her eyes red, hands shaking. Jacob was asleep beside her, curled up in his coat. Sarah told Marcus she'd been fired. The boss accused her of being unreliable for leaving early to pick up her son. That night, something inside Marcus snapped. He couldn't watch her break again. He had once promised himself he'd never get involved with anyone's pain again. But Sarah and Jacob weren't just anyone anymore. They were family he hadn't known he was missing. Marcus used his savings to help her pay rent that month. When she refused, he told her it was a loan, though they both knew he'd never ask for it back. Slowly, she started picking herself up again. She began doing freelance accounting for small businesses from home, and Marcus, who ran a small construction company, offered to let her manage his company's accounts. It was the beginning of something real, not just financially, but emotionally. As seasons changed, the three of them began sharing life's quiet moments together. Trips to the park, dinners that felt like family, Christmas mornings that didn't feel lonely anymore. Marcus would never forget the day Jacob ran to him, hugged him tight, and called him Dad without hesitation. Sarah froze when she heard it, tears welling up, her eyes meeting Marcus's with a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude for what he'd brought into their lives, and fear of losing it all again. Marcus didn't let her speak. He just smiled and said softly, "He's right. You both deserve someone who won't walk away." Months later, as the coffee shop's familiar scent filled the air once again, Marcus stood by the same door where it all began. This time, the rain had stopped, the world outside bright with morning light. Sarah was inside, laughing with Jacob as they shared breakfast. Marcus took a deep breath, holding a small velvet box in his trembling hands. His heart raced, not out of fear, but out of something pure. The realization that he was finally where he was meant to be. He walked in, knelt beside their table, and before he could say a word, Jacob grinned and whispered, "Told you he wouldn't leave, Mom." And for the first time, Sarah let herself believe in forever. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that sometimes love finds us when we least expect it, please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who might need hope today and subscribe for more stories that celebrate kindness, redemption, and second chances. Before we end, I'd love to hear from you. Would you have stayed like Marcus did? Comment below and tell us your thoughts. Your words mean more than you know. Because sometimes the smallest act of staying can change someone's entire life.